Hola, mi amigos. Hola, bienvenido. Uh, Mi nombre es Ken, and I want to welcome you, bienvenidos, a mi casa. Esta es mi casa. And you are all welcome here, now, at this very moment. I invite you in, 6 o'clock on February 11th, 2021. You are all my guests. I welcome you. Hello, Lisa. First one through the door, Lisa. Debbie from Florida. Second one through the door. Thank you. So now that we're all en mi casa, in fact, we're all in my bedroom, frankly. As you can see, one of the cats is already sleeping. Hello, Rachel. So, um, I don't even remember. I wonder if one of my daughters gave this to me. It appears to be a dragon pen. And I'm such a ditz, I don't remember half the stuff that goes on in my life. Kathy and Rose, good evening. Good evening. So, welcome everybody to today's episode, today's undertaking in the time of the post Trump era, right? It's now 6:01 p.m. in Dallas, Texas. If it's not 6:01 p.m. in Dallas, Texas, when you're watching this, you're watching it at a time when it is not live and in living color. I guess it could be in living color, but it ain't live. So it's February 11th. And today's theme, of course, the theme doesn't always have anything to do with the topic, right? A lot of you have already figured that part out. It's dancing. Dancing, and the world dances with you, right? That's not necessarily true. A lot of people are wallflowers. I myself have been known to be a wallflower frequently, but I chose three of the best songs about dance and I posted them in the title or wherever it is you see it. And quite frankly, I thought tonight's selection was extraordinary in that it's three jams. I mean, just jams. Martha Vandella dancing in the streets, and Archie Bell and the Drells. I Can't Stop Dancing, and I think the other one Sly Stone. Whatever the name, whatever the song. Obviously, I knew what it was. I look it up. Dance to the music, right? Yeah. All right. So sometimes I play something that to you is slightly obscure, but as soon as you hear it, you're like, right? Sometimes that happens with old music. You haven't heard it in 10 years, 20 years. You didn't listen to an oldie station. You didn't listen to Ken Goldberg pontificate on the extraordinary talent that was available in the 60s, right? So here I am, exposing you to
Let me put this hamburger down. I don't want no mouth. I want to dance.
Yeah, baby. I don't want no malt. I just want to dance. Can you picture it? I mean, I can always picture like you were at some restaurant, the kind that had a jukebox back in the day, right? And, all of a sudden one of the jams came on, and you were like, I don't want to eat my hamburger. I don't want no malt. I just want to dance, right? I mean, sometimes you might have been at a club and they were playing some kind of music and y'all were chit-chatting, you were sitting around, a round table, maybe 6 or 7 of you just chatting away. And all of a sudden, a show enough jam came on, right? I mean, lit up the place and you were like, you didn't want any more chat. You didn't want to chat. You wanted to get up and dance. You're like, who wants to get up and dance? Of course, all the boys were like, and the girls were like, yeah, let's dance. And, you got up, and the boys sat there after the girls got up and just kept talking and talking about how crazy those girls were, because the girls would get out on the floor and they would shake it till they break it, right? And guys were just like wallflowers, I'm not saying all guys, okay? So if you're one of the exceptions, you don't have to send me hate mail. I'm just saying, and the women will verify for me that in general, when the music shifted and all of a sudden it was jamming, it was not uncommon for the boys to sit back in the cut, like all cool and stuff, all macho and like, I ain't dancing, But I grew up, and across the street from me was a family. So I lived in what was probably a white neighborhood when I was born, 1952, 53, right? And then my family moved from 81st and Yates or so to South Shore, 70th and Bennett. And that was white when I was young, like in grade school, not grade school, but kindergarten, first and second. And then what happened was, and this is the truth, the grade school I went to was called Parkside, right? And at Parkside Grade School, there was a lot of apartment dwellers who were enrolled in that school, and we were all home dwellers, single family housing. So what happened is they redistricted me in the third, fourth grade, redistricted me. I woke up one morning and I was no longer a student at Parkside. It didn't happen in the middle of the school year, it happened over the summer. Suddenly I was a student and enrolled at O'Keefe Grade School, which was a few more blocks away and involved a major street, Jeffrey, that I had navigated. Anyway, so I went there. And by the time I graduated, that was probably 60% Black. Anyways, I'm telling you, I was in the shifting community. Well, my block was shifting too. There were 3 Black families moved in before I ever got to high school. And they had boys my age. 2 of the families had boys my age. There were not that many boys my age, a handful. But anyways, I would go over to the Smith residence. Their dad was a dentist. Their mom was always home. She was a housewife. And they were already into soul music. I wasn't that acquainted with it, but there I was, and you had to get up and dance. They would put on Function at the Junction, come on and they would expect you to get up, because it's 5 brothers. There were no girls in the family. Mom wasn't dancing, but they would get up and dance with each other, and they would get up, Ken, get up. You want to stay here? You want to, Okay, so I had to do some of that. Ray Dean says 8th grade boys leaning on the wall the whole 2 hours. So you know what I'm saying, right? And it wasn't just the dance, because women are kind of funny, younger women anyways, because if they heard the music, it didn't matter necessarily where they were, right? When I'm saying it could have been a restaurant, it could have been a club, and everybody might have been real mellow and just, having a drink and talking, and maybe they were playing some, cool jazz or whatever, I don't know. But all of a sudden, you had somebody hit the jam, and the jam box was playing, and all of a sudden people's toes were tapping, and you weren't listening to jazz anymore. You were listening to rhythm and blues, and you had to get up. Now, I used to go to a place called Teresa's Lounge. Teresa's Lounge was I'm guessing now, it's been so many years, 47th and Indiana, I believe. 47th Indiana was the inner city, and I would go with different people. And at the time, the headliners there, most of the time, if they weren't on the road, was Buddy Guy and Junior Wells. They always were together. I mean, they're 2 different groups, but they weren't. And so I would go out to Teresa's, and I didn't dance. I was too embarrassed to dance in a Black club, because I just knew I had no moves compared to the people around me. So I sat there, but I knew jams when I heard jams. And when you see, so what would happen is Junior Wells would get up, and I got to tell you, if you never saw Junior Wells before he passed away, when he was young, he would get up. He was known as a blues guy, but that was not the whole story. I would get up, and you would he sounded and often acted like James Brown. I mean, he had moves, and he had a voice, and he had songs. Maybe he was singing James Brown songs. I don't remember, but I just remember like, oh my God, it's like I'm watching James Brown. Buddy Guy just got more sophisticated. Junior Wells kind of got older. He kind of stayed in that kind of ghetto culture, because I saw him years later. I saw them both years later, and Buddy Guy had on kind of like a hip shirt, and he was just, you could tell he was a man of the times. He owned Buddy Guy's Legends Lounge downtown, and he was all shotgun, shoot 'em up, baby, shot. Yeah, Radine, you talking? Now you talking? So I was talking with Buddy Guy, and I was telling him that when I was a kid, I used to visit Teresa's Lounge, and we were laughing and stuff. He's older than me, and Junior came in, and Junior was dressed in this almost neon green suit with the hat. It was like he was stuck in 1972, and Buddy had moved on, and Buddy was becoming more successful, and that was the deal. So anyways, Junior had it going on when I was young, when he was young, when Buddy was young. I think I've told you I lived next door to Buddy's brother, Philip. Philip Guy lived at the end of the co-op parking lot. For those of you from Hyde Park, at the end of the Hyde Park co-op, there was two buildings, two twin buildings, and I lived in one building, and Philip Guy and his wife lived in the next one, and we were friends, and they would sometimes take me to the lounge. He played with his brother. Back then, he was his lead guitarist. He died of cancer. Anyways, dancing, baby. All I'm saying is maybe the antidote to what is happening frequently to us, the oppressive nature of the political landscape. It's some of you have watched the impeachment, and you're wondering, what's up? How's it coming? And I've had a chance since we met yesterday to examine what other people are saying, and pretty much most of the people that are commenting legally are saying a lot of what I'm saying, that there's still this the link is shown by inference, but not by there's no direct evidence. It's all circumstantial, but it's so overwhelmingly circumstantial that, as the judge would tell the jury, if there was a judge and if there was a criminal case, you may infer from the facts. I would say to the senators, while maybe we don't have him sitting conspiring with the Proud Boys, an hour before the rally, we've presented enough facts that you may draw an inference, a logical and reasonable inference, that he clearly understood and knew the nature of what was going to happen and encouraged it. So that's going on. They rested about an hour ago, or maybe a couple hours ago. I don't really know, because I watch on a delay. I just do that because I'm constantly moving around. So I pause it. I've been cleaning the kitchen for hours. I've been redoing, putting everything in a different place, trying to examine my kitchen and clear the counters, which means, and most of you already have done this or you've thought about it, where can I put things that will, instead of having them on the counter everywhere where they're easily accessible, but cluttering, how do you find a spot in the kitchen where they won't clutter, but they're not inaccessible? I went through the kitchen, I'm finding stuff, and I did this not that long ago, maybe a year ago. What I'm finding is, oh my God, I forgot I had this back here. Look, down on the bottom shelf, towards the back. Something slipped back there. And so I'm trying to. I'm not a big fan of using. I've got cabinets and they've got depth. But as most especially those of you that use your kitchen, if I put something in the back of a fairly deep cabinet, I just don't see it. So I've been trying to create an environment for myself where I don't put things out of sight, out of mind. I'm doing the refrigerator the same way because the back of the refrigerator is like no man's land. It's like a place where food goes to die, right? And then I discovered, I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd remembered I had that. So I cleaned out stuff that was getting old, and then I tried to move things up and put them on the shelves, on the doors. I've got that double door, which I really love. So anyways, that's what I was working on. So while I'm working on all of that, I got the TV on in the bedroom, fairly loud, and I'm listening as best I can. And I'm in and out. So I'm pausing because I'm taking a phone call or whatever. So I was behind by at least an hour, maybe two, when they rested. And it's clear to me that there's no conviction in sight, that the defense doesn't even have to defend at this point. The lawyers that Trump has hired really don't have to do anything because Lindsey Graham and several others that would be needed to roust everybody to a conviction are not going to do it. They're simply not going to do it. Doesn't matter what's at stake. Doesn't matter if some argue that the perception of democracy will be shaken to its core if there is nothing done about this, that the injury to the cops, the injury to the other persons is not enough to move them. So the conversation is amongst the legal scholars is, what does it take to convict? If I was summarizing the defense in a criminal trial, and I have to every time I have a criminal trial, you must summarize the facts and the law. So you want to impress upon a jury at the end of the case, as you did at the beginning of the case, that there is a burden which the other side must meet. I have no burden. One of the reasons I never put somebody on the stand that's been accused of a crime, first off, they've been accused of a crime, and if they get defensive while they're on the stand, the prosecutors ask them questions, and people get defensive because prosecutors are attacking you. So the person gets defensive. And by being defensive, the jurors sitting there going, look at that. He's getting mad. He's guilty. So I learned after one jury trial, don't do that again, right? And I never put a defendant on the stand in front of a jury again. Now, so as we near the end of the case, I've got to be thinking, what facts did I elicit? What facts did the other side elicit? What did I do to destroy the credibility of the witnesses that appeared on behalf of the prosecutor? Because, like I said, I'm not putting my client on, right? So the underpinnings of a criminal defense are, one, I destroyed the case that the prosecution presented, or two, I undermined their prosecution to the point where they did not meet the standard, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. It doesn't matter if you have, whether you think my client is guilty. You have to believe that the evidence proved beyond a reasonable doubt. So when I get to the end of the case and I'm summarizing it, I'm going to hammer that if you're not sure, then you really got no business convicting. And a lot of people will admit, even those that convict you, well, I wasn't sure, but the rest of the jurors were sure, so I went along with them. And you're like, God darn it. No, you weren't supposed to do that. So I tell them the law is, in criminal cases, beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, it's not a criminal case. And so the prosecution doesn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. I think they merely probably should need to prove that it's more likely than not that he created this environment, encouraged it, manipulated it, and incited it. I'm convinced of that, but, I was leaning in that direction before they presented any evidence, hoping the feds find enough evidence against the leaders of these hate groups and they go to trial. Yeah, well, in the Michigan case, Ray Dean, one has already pled guilty. Those 13 mopes that wanted to kidnap and probably kill Governor Whitmer, one has already pled guilty. So my guess is if he's the first one, he's probably going to be testifying against the others. When the federal government charges you with a crime, here's a little footnote. When the feds charge you with a crime, they will tell you, the lawyer, especially in a case like this that Ray Dean has pointed out, leaders of hate groups, they're going to say to the various defendants, if you have something to offer, you need to get with it and come in here. First come, first served. So if there's a allegation of, for instance, a conspiracy that the Proud Boys in Hawaii, Michigan, and Virginia consulted each other before they went to the Capitol, that would be a conspiracy. So they'll say, you want to come in here and help yourself. The feds do this. It's built into the federal system that if you cop a plea, one, prompt admission of guilt, and two, cooperation, full cooperation with the government, you get a significant break in your possible sentencing. So they may be tripping over each other as more get arrested to try and throw the rest of the guys under the bus, right? Because they can help themselves. And this is not, these guys are not all hardcore, ready to go to prison guys. Anyways, Ken has spoken on the impeachment. I don't think there's much more to cover. I think you will see the defense tomorrow. I think the defense will appear weak to most of you because it's going to be weak. It's not going to be much of a defense, really. I mean, what are you going to do? They don't have any videos showing Trump on the phone. Hey, hurry up, get the troops out. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I mean, they don't have a set of facts. They've got to what they've got to do tomorrow and the next day. I think they get 2 days. Is they simply have to try to minimize. They have to minimize the prosecution's allegations, right? That's all they've got is to say, yeah, they made it sound worse than it really is. Here's a different characterization of it. He wasn't inciting, as Alan Dershowitz is already saying, he was inviting, not inciting. Isn't that cute? That Alan Dershowitz, what a scum. But anyways, so that's kind of what they're going to do. They're going to say he was inviting them to the Capitol. He was not inciting them. That will be the defense in large measure. Buffalo Boy is getting catered to, so he is singing. Is that for real? I mean, when you say singing, I know he said that Trump led him to do this, but real singing in a case like this is not to accuse Trump. That they're not going to be interested in that. What they're going to be interested in with Buffalo Boy, the shaman, is who else did you consult? Who else can you give us? Whose head can you give us on a platter that will go to prison? Trump's not going to prison, not on this case. So again, they'll ask the shaman, QAnon, they'll ask him if he knows anybody maybe that was building bombs or said they were going to break into the Capitol, and does he have text on his phone, or does he have emails from others that will demonstrate guilt? That's what they'll be asking him for. And they'll be asking him if he's going to be able to do the deal. Will he be able to testify against them? So we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? It's gonna be a hellacious to me, because as I sit and I watch the defense in this case, and I typically am pro-defense. Even when I don't like the defense, I tend to be pro-defense, and the reason for that is I don't favor prosecution. I'm a defense lawyer, always was. I never participated in a prosecution. I did apply to the prosecutor's office in Tucson, and they very quickly dismissed me. They did interview me. They quickly said, yeah, you're not what we're looking for. So I tend to be pro-defense, and I tend to look at any prosecution with the jaundiced eye that I suggested yesterday you all would be looking at. And but there was a woman. I think she's a lawyer, and maybe she's a politician. Maybe she's in the House of Representatives. I don't know. So many people have come and gone. And she said, if this were a criminal case, his lawyers would be trying to cut a deal after hearing the prosecution's case. And that's true. You hear about people copping a plea in the middle of a trial. You've probably seen, 3 days in the trial, they say, the case was resolved. And sometimes it's a civil case, sometimes it's a criminal case. In a criminal case, it's typically the guy's asking his lawyer, how's it going? And the lawyer says, it ain't going well, man. We're not doing a good, we have a lot of good facts, man. It's not looking good. Well, what do you suggest? Well, I don't know. I think if you get convicted, the judge is going to probably throw the book at you, maybe cut our losses and have me talk to the prosecutor and see if I can cut a better deal. And then they say, yeah. And so the defense attorney contacts the prosecutor and says, let's sit down and says, what are you willing to do if my guy ends this right now and pleads guilty? You don't have to bring in all these witnesses. You can let everybody go. You don't have to bring the victim in. We know that the victim, and then the deal is cut and the trial ends. Similarly, that can happen in a civil case. If you've ever been a juror in a civil case and a couple of days in or a couple hours in, all of a sudden they told you the case has been settled, it means that somebody was looking at the other side's case and said, uh-oh, and they cut bait and run, as they say. So that's not uncommon. People aren't clear on how much of a jam it might be that they're in until the other side puts on its case. I, on the other hand, as a defense lawyer, I usually know how bad it's going to be because I do my homework. And so when the prosecution begins, I'm usually ready for worst case scenario, and I'm usually ready to rebut their case because I told you yesterday, I wasn't clear enough yesterday. I don't want to put on a defense. In other words, after the prosecution rests, then the defense, that would be me typically, gets to put on what's called their case in chief. All right, I better explain. So when the prosecution begins the case at the beginning of the trial, it's called the prosecution's case in chief. It is their presentation, their burden. That's why they have to go. They get to go first. I don't have to prove anything, right? At the end of their case, what they call rest, but they reserve the right to rebut anything I may say if I put evidence in that they think is wrong, right? So I really don't want to have to rely upon my case in chief. What I want to rely upon is that as the prosecution was putting on their case, I was tearing it apart. I was busy tearing apart their case in chief so that each time one of their witnesses took the stand, I usually made them look bad, unreliable, lacking in credibility, so that by the time the prosecution is done, we always ask the judge to dismiss the case. We always make the following motion. Defense attorneys always do this. Judge, I'm asking you to dismiss the charges because we don't believe that the prosecution's case standing alone has risen to the level of reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt, we believe that if nothing else happens, we've already won. And in very rare cases, the judge will agree. Usually you make your motion, you argue it, and the judge says, okay, I'll deny your motion, continue. And now it's my case in chief. So I'm putting on my witnesses, my alibi witnesses, my witnesses, my expert witnesses that will testify that the gunshot residue test was performed inaccurately, that kind of thing. And then they get the last shot. Remember, I told you, prosecutor gets, so they can, I brought in an expert to refute their expert. Now they get a chance to bring in somebody to refute my expert and say no, things like that. Then they get to go first and put on their closing argument, whatever it is, whatever they're arguing that demonstrates guilt, they're going to go for it, but they're always going to save what's called rebuttal. They get to do that, and they always do wisely, because then I'm going to get up and I'm going to get heard, and by the time I'm done, people are thinking, guy's not guilty. So now they get a second bite of the apple. They get to come back and say, all that stuff that Mr. Goldberg said is wrong, and here's why it's wrong. So I have to be really convincing, because studies show that first and last things you hear, you retain best and are most influential. So the fact that the government, the prosecutors always get to go last in a criminal case is always worrisome, because you'll remember their last argument the best. And a good prosecutor is laying for you. Nothing you can do about it. You know they're coming back, but there's nothing you can do. They're going to get one more shot at you before the case goes to the jury. And so my case in chief, their case in chief, and then rebuttal. All right. It'd be rare for me to be allowed rebuttal. I'd have to really argue they put on something that I can absolutely destroy in the rebuttal. And by the way, just a footnote, you didn't ask. After I've done my case in chief, they can only rebut that which I have introduced. They can't start putting in new stuff. All they can say is, well, when Mr. Goldberg's witness said that the gunshot residue found on the sweatshirt was actually powdered sugar, here's why he's wrong, or his witness was wrong. They can only rebut those things that I brought up. As they say in the law, I open the door. If I haven't brought something up and they suddenly decide, oh, this is juicy, we should have put this in, we should go now, I'm going to stop that. It's not, they had their shot. They had their case in chief. Now you know more about the anatomy of a trial. I hope that's interesting. I, of course, am interested in law because I practiced it. I called a lawyer today, my friend from Hyde Park, Candace Gorman. Some of you know her. I called Candace. She's been living in Michigan. She has a house in Michigan. She's been there throughout the pandemic, but she's working. She's working hard, man. She's doing a lot of constitutional cases. I called and said, I just need to call somebody that would know why I'm pulling my hair out listening to these arguments and thinking, why is all this necessary? They've already demonstrated by inference that he's guilty. Why? So she and I talked about a number of cases that we've worked on together, that she's working on, that I've worked on, and I got it off my chest. She's doing cases right now that are a product of the torture cases that John Burge created when he was a lieutenant in the homicide division in the City of Chicago Police Department out of 51st and Wentworth. So John Burge ultimately went to prison for lying during a trial by saying that he didn't torture anybody, when in fact it had been proven that he did torture suspects, but the statute of limitations had run. So they sued him in civil court for damages for torturing people. And he took the stand in the civil case and he lied and said, I didn't torture anybody. And when the case was over, the federal government moved in, arrested him and charged him with perjury during the civil trial, put him on trial, and won against him for lying in the civil case. They couldn't get him for the torture. It was too far in the past. Now, after that, I probably have told you there's a torture commission, which is a tortured way to go about it. But what's interesting is, if you were a suspect who was interviewed, by the Homicide Division of 51st and Wentworth while John Birch was the lieutenant. They were attaching car batteries to testicles of people to get them to confess. Anyways, those persons are entitled to go before the Torture Commission, which was established by the courts, and to offer up proof that they were tortured. If the Torture Commission finds a proof of torture, then they can refer the case back to the chief judge of the criminal court for a hearing on whether there should be a new trial. Because typically you just can't get a new trial. There's no, it's been too long. There's no grounds for it. But a lot of these people spend 15 and 20 years in prison because of John Birch. And Birch wasn't alone, by the way. His whole posse was torturing people like Michael McDermott, who was a detective in his division. McDermott was torturing people, lots of people. So if McDermott was the detective on the case, it's prudent to talk to somebody and find out, how did he treat you while you were in custody? And Candace is doing some of those cases. And it's really hard, but really important work. And she's also working on deprivation of constitutional rights on the basis of Chicago police officers shooting somebody who was not an immediate threat, who wasn't even armed. And I worked on that case with her. So we chatted, and it was helpful to me, lawyer to lawyer and friend to friend, because Candace went to Kenwood High School, for those of you from the South Side, and I went there for a couple of months. It was one of the 4 schools. And yes, Ray Dean, it is good for her. And I'll tell you something else. There was a time when she went to, McDermott. Debbie knows McDermott, I think. There was a time when Candace, she was doing a lot of cases for people, older people who are being fired. She was doing age discrimination cases. At some point, she abandoned her civil practice to take on the representation of people who were being held at Guantanamo Bay, persons who had been allegedly terrorists or combatants, what do they call them? There was a term for the combatants. And she was representing them, trying to help them, get them processed, get them out of Guantanamo Bay. And then she went to The Hague, to the International Court, and worked for a year and a half there. Extraordinary career. My career faltered because I just couldn't take it emotionally and psychologically, but she never faltered. And when she came back from The Hague, she started her practice anew, new. She had no practice anymore. She'd been gone too long. And now she's doing these constitutional cases where she only gets paid if she wins. Only gets paid if she wins. She's already won a $22 million verdict against the city of Chicago for the wrongful incarceration of a person that was framed by the police department. And there were 2 trials, and she won, and she got a verdict from the jury of $22 million, and it's now just constantly being appealed. The city doesn't want to pay, but they'll pay something, So, me, I'm boring by contrast. She is so diligent. When you meet a lawyer that has that kind of commitment and diligence, you know what it does if you're a lawyer, or even if you just know lawyers, you feel bad for those people that have a mediocre lawyer that is not motivated to get to the bottom of a case. That, for instance, takes a criminal client but never goes to the scene of the crime. I've had that numerous times. I have been on a criminal case with other persons charged with the crime, and I was the only attorney that was out conducting my own interviews, going to the crime scene, so that when I got to court, I knew what I wanted to say to the jury. And it hurts people who have hired lawyers, usually for more money than me, but who are not going to outwork me. One thing I did when I was a lawyer was I worked hard. Why? Because I was a defendant. because when I was 17 and I was looking at 6 to 15 years in the penitentiary, I'm thinking, I knew I was scared. So when I became a lawyer, I always looked at the defendant. I'm looking to my right because I usually stood on the left. I looked at them and thought, what is this person thinking? What are they feeling? I mean, they got to be feeling the weight of the government coming down on them. These cops, these prosecutors, the judge, everybody's against them. I'm it, man. So, if I don't give it my all, if I don't put it in, how does that play out, man? You're in a system where they're already stacked against you, and then your lawyer wants to lay down because he ain't got the time. Oh, no, bullshit, man. Get your ass in there and work if you're not going to do the job. I did this one murder case, and I worked with a group of kids that were all involved, alibi witnesses, witnesses, whatever. And the other defendant, they call him a co-defendant, he had a lawyer that was a former prosecutor, I was my third year of law. I was just a rookie. He had been around. He had been a prosecutor. He was in private practice. He was older. He is silver haired, had a nice mustache. And so he, I went to him and I said, why don't we work together? And he's like, yeah, no, I don't. Your client's going down, right? And so he said, your client's the one they said got the gun. My client was just standing there alongside your client, according to the witnesses. So I worked for a year. From the moment he called me the day after the arrest. His family called me. I met him at the jail. I talked to him. He spent a year in jail, almost 1 year exactly. We went to trial. So the kids, I asked him, I say, well, when I say kids, they're all teenagers, older teenagers, gang kids. And I said, what has Mr. So-and-so done to prepare so-and-so's case? Because my client was friends with the other co-defendant. And they said, he hadn't done anything that we know of, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? We're getting close to trial. And they're like, yeah, no. I'm like, you got to be doing something. So one day they told me, I'm meeting with them it's a Saturday and the trial starts on Monday. And I'm meeting with this group of about 6, 7 kids. And all from around the Amundsen High School area. In case you're from Chicago, Amundsen's on the north side, and this shooting took place right by Amundsen. So the kids told me, you know what? We got to go see Mr. So-and-so, the other lawyer. He wants to interview us, wants to talk before the trial. I'm like, well, that's good. I'm glad he's finally getting around to it. So they left, but I was at one kid's house. I mean, I was on my work out in the streets. Trying to get kids to come to your office, man, that's like herding cats. That ain't going to work. So I went. I'm sitting there talking to whoever home it was. I don't know, maybe my client's parent. Maybe I was talking to his mom. Before I could leave, just sitting there chatting, the kids came back. Maybe 40 minutes. I'm like, what happened? He said, well, we got there and he said he didn't need to talk to us. Oh my God. So I carried the case for the two of them. I got them both off because I was able to prove that they were together and they didn't do it. They both didn't do it. My guy didn't do it. And as a result, neither did this guy do it. Medical people should have that same kind of diligence. I absolutely agree. And part of the problem in the medical profession is the incentive is to take on more clients. I really like my doctor, Richard Chen. I like him because, for instance, somebody asked me, could do you know a doctor? I said, yeah, I like my doctor. He's this young Asian guy. I really like him. He's got a lot of personality. He's got a good bedside manner. So they said, well, could you give me his number? So I did. Yeah, of course, and they said he's not taking more clients. And here's the deal. When I go to see him, let's say my appointment's 8:00. I get there, until you get there 15 minutes early. Sometime between 8 and 8:15, I always get called into the office. I get called into the nurse. The nurse does the blood pressure and, takes your weight, does your height and all that. They sit down, ask you a couple questions, says, doctor will be in shortly. Okay, so now, my appointment was 8 o'clock. It's about 8:15. I've already answered preliminary questions. Had my blood, about 8:20 in walks the doctor. Hi, Ken, how you doing? What are you here for today? And, we get to work. 8:30, I'm done. Maybe I got to go over to the lab down the hall. Maybe not. I'm out, in and out. That's the way it should be. But my doctor before, I had a doctor before I really liked. But every time I went to his office, man, it was jacked full of people, and I never saw him on time. It was not uncommon to wait an hour. And I'm furious, right? And he was a really nice guy and a good doctor. By the time you saw him, he'd come in, oh, how are you? And your heart would melt. You're like, I was so mad. And then I'm like, he's such a nice guy. But then one day I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I walk up to the reception and said, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gone. And I was. All right. It's the end of the show. I hope you'll dance. I hope you'll click on the 3 links and dance. Come on. Dance, and the world dances with you. If you want to record a video and post it to Facebook, I'll watch it. I'll watch it. Do the bop, do the monkey, do the twine, do whatever you want. Make up your own dance. I don't care. I just think that maybe dance is the antidote to all that's going on right now. We can't do much else, so right? Listen, I don't know who all showed up. A lot of people I'm used to showing up. I didn't see here. Maybe they said something and I just was so busy, but, dance to the music. So we're going to do a little metta, because that's what we do. We bring our hands together before our hearts and we close our eyes. We bow our heads. Mark, you are here. I didn't think I saw you before. Mark and Ann. Dance to the music, yeah. So I close my eyes and I send out kindness, but I start with myself. May I be happy, healthy, free from harm. May I be free from anger, anxiety, and fear. May this practice lead me to greater peace and comfort, and ultimately free me from all suffering, right? May my mother and father and all my family members and all my friends be happy, be healthy, be free from harm. May they too find the path to dance and to comfort and to peace. And to those persons I don't dig, I got some resentment, some ill will, man, even them, they should be happy, healthy, free from harm. They too should be enjoying lives of comfort and peace. And to all living beings throughout the entire universe, multiple galaxies, I care not. To all humans and non-humans alike, we radiate goodwill, compassion, and kindness. May all living beings be happy, healthy, free from harm, living their lives in safety, comfort, and peace. Satu, Satu, Satu. Well, thank you, Lisa, Mark, Kathy, and Rose, I guess, and Rachel. I'm saying, I guess, Debbie, because I was trying to remember who was here, right? Ray Dean and Jim. Jim showed up tonight, and, if I missed anybody, like I said, Lisa, Debbie, Kathy, all y'all, when I do this, I shouldn't say power to the people. This is peace, right? Power to the people. All of it, man. Just all of it. Namaste. Whatever it takes to get through it. All right. Thank you, Rachel and